Hey, everybody, it's Greg again. It's another edition of Unbreakable podcast. Listen, it is short time to get there. Children, it is Thursday, May the 20th. And we're doing our movie classic of the week, Smokey and the Bandit. Listen, Jerry Reed, Eastbound Indiana. This was his biggest hit. Bound to die. And he wrote the song overnight. They needed a theme song for Smokey and Bandit. And Jerry Reed said, no problem. He wrote it overnight, presented it to the director, Hal Needham, and Needham said, don't touch it. It's perfect. It's perfect for this movie. Smokey and the Bandit. What a fun movie. 1977, starring Burt Reynolds, who was the leading box office actor at the time. It didn't have much of a plot. It was about these Georgia bootleggers that agreed to go and pick up Coors beer, which was illegal east of the Mississippi at that time, which is true. Coors beer had no preservatives, and without a permit, it was illegal to sell it east of the Mississippi. I can't get this song in. I just keep singing it. We guys, y'all, such a catchy song, isn't it? So, these two millionaires, Little Enos and Big Enos. Said the Burt Reynolds, who played Smokey, or not, he played the Bandit, we'll give you $80,000, which was equivalent nowadays. See how things have gone up? That $80,000 back in 1977 would be worth over $415,000 today. If you could bring us back 40 cases of Coors beer within 28 hours, $80,000 is yours. In the original script, the prize was a new truck, but they decided that we'd rather give you money. So, and that's it. It's getting to Texarkana, Texas, which is right over the border from Texas and Arkansas. Getting there, picking up the beer, and getting back to Georgia within 28 hours. Piece of cake, right? Especially if you're Burt Reynolds and you're driving a Trans Am, a black Trans Am. Well, but on the way back, they ran into a few problems. Like, why is this Smokey? Why is this police guy from Texas, the sheriff, Buford T. Justice? Hi, Katie. Why is he chasing me? Well, the cops are chasing the bandit because the bandit is running shotgun. Jerry Reed, who is the snowman in the movie, is driving the rig with the 40 cases of Coors beer. And in order to get through as quickly as he can, cops and red lights and all kinds of things, Burt Reynolds is driving ahead of him, clearing out the traffic. Burt Reynolds is like, all right, cops, if you want to chase me, let the truck go through. We just want to get that beer back in Georgia. But on the way back, they run into all kinds of hijinks and problems. Burt Reynolds picks up Sally Field. Her name is Carrie, and she's a runaway bride, and she gets involved with the bandit, and they have all kinds of other CB characters involved, and it's one hijinks after another. Anyway, Smokey and the Bandit was made in 1977. And we talked about the Coors beer thing. And did you know that Smokey's... Oh, wait, you know what? I'm going to put my glasses on for this. Because I am old and I cannot see. There. Now I can see it. Did you know that the Bandit, played by Burt Reynolds, had a real name? His real name was Bo Darville. Bo Darville. And he was known all across the South as this kind of Robin Hoodish guy who had the black Trans Am, who could outrun anybody, and he was crazy enough to do anything. See, this big Enos and Lily, these millionaires from Texas, they offered this, hi Coco, they offered this wage to other truckers down south to bring back the Coors beer. They all failed. Either they didn't get back in time or they were arrested. So the bandits are going to take a shot at this. You know, it starts out at a truck rodeo down in Georgia, down south, and the bandit is resting there in a hammock, and they make him the offer. Yeah. And he says, okay, we're going to do it. Talks the snowman into it, and off they go. So Bo Darville was his name. And now this film was released, very interesting. It was made for $4 million. But you know, back then was a lot of money. Originally the budget was $5 million, but at the last moment, Needham got a call from Hollywood. And actually, the studio sent a hatchet man, he used to call it a hatchet man, down to Georgia on location when they were filming, and said to Needham at the last minute, we gotta cut $1 million off the budget. That's why it's called Hatchet Man. Well, here, Needham didn't know what to do because he's already paying Burt Reynolds $1 million. That was his fee back then, $1 million a picture. And that only left him with like $3 million to do the whole picture. So he really had to script around and cut corners there, but they did it. Now, here's the thing. The movie, hi Katie, everybody's coming there. They must love Smokey and the Bandit. The film was released at Radio City Music Hall in New York on May the 27th. That was like 2 days ago, 1977. And why they premiered it at Radio City Music Hall, I don't know. Well, what we know, Radio City Music Hall is one of the, if not the most famous theater in the world. But the crowd absolutely, they hated it. They hated Smokey and the Bandit. And the producers started, whoa. But then they made a very smart decision. They decided to show the film for a month, starting in June, only in the South. They started with all the big cities in the South: Atlanta, Dallas, Mobile, Alabama, New Orleans, all the big cities in the South, Florida, Miami. And they showed the movie. And of course, people in Dixie, they love the movie because it's set there and it's really a Southern kind of a movie. In fact, when Billy Bob Thornton came up to Burt Reynolds back then, he said, you know, this movie is more like a documentary than a movie, because he said, this is what we do down here. There are bootleggers, and there are people like the Bandit, and people like Sheriff Buford T. Justice, and things like that happened. Yeah. So they showed the movie down south. People loved it. And then July 27th, exactly 2 months later, from the premiere, they opened in LA. And because it had gotten such great word of mouth down south, people loved it. They showed it all around the country. People loved it. So that's how Smokey and the Bandit came to be. And they called it a sleeper hit that summer. It was actually the second movie in 1977, number 2 at the box office. Guess what number 1 was? Star Wars. That's right. The same year that the original Star Wars came out, Smokey and the Bandit was the runner-up for making the most money. Okay, next. The Trans Am. That it actually Reynolds named his particular Trans Am in the movie Trigger. Black Trans Am. After the Smokey and the Bandit, everybody wanted black Trans Am. That was one of the numerous things which we'll talk about, sort of a legacy, because of Smokey and the Bandit, the Pontiac Trans Am became really popular back in the day. Very popular. They actually studio gave Needham 4 different Trans Ams, black Trans Ams, to use for the movie. And all 4 were ruined. By the end of the movie, with all the stunts that they had Reynolds do and stuntmen, they practically wrecked the 4 Trans Ams. But get this, but because there was such an increase in sales of Trans Ams, Pontiac made a deal with Burt Reynolds. Now, he couldn't keep the original Trans Am because that was like falling apart from all the stunts and everything. But they gave him another Trans Am for his own personal use. And the studio made a deal and said to Burt Reynolds they would gift him a new Trans Am every year for as long as he lives. There you go. And in fact, Burt Reynolds died in 2018. And he was selling off a lot of his memorabilia back in 2015. Maybe he needed a body, or maybe the end of his life was approaching, and he wanted other people to enjoy his memorabilia. So he sold a lot of it, and the last Trans Am that he got from Pontiac, he sold it, and he autographed it. He signed it and sold it. So somebody out there has a black Trans Am that was signed by the one and only Bandit. That must be worth a fortune now, And as we know, what happened was, without giving stuff away, at the end of the movie, after all these cop chases and car wrecks and everything, they make it back Georgia with 10 minutes to spare. 10 minutes. And they got the Coors Light to the Edis brothers. And but Burt Reynolds did not take the $80,000. Why? Because Big Edis and Little Edis offered them they had another offer. Double or nothing. You go up to Boston, pick us up some clam chowder, bring it back to Georgia within 18 hours, not 28, but 18 hours, and we will double your price. And Jerry Reed, and I said, "No, take it. No, we'd had enough." By then, they had enough. They were ready to go to bed. But Burt Reynolds, being the Bandit, being this devil may care guy, daredevil guy, said, "Oh, you got it. Let's go." They jumped into, by then all the Trans Ams were smashed up. They jumped into a Cadillac, which was owned by Big Edis, Little Edis, and they took off for Boston. That's kind of how the movie ends, with Buford T. Justice still in hot pursuit. So anyway, the Trans Am was a big deal back then, about kind of a legacy kind of thing. In the original script, Big Edith and Little Edith were known as Kyle and Dickie. Guess there's some sort of an inside joke there. One of the Big Edith, little, I don't want to say it. The script. The script was written by Hal Needham. And I gotta tell you something about this Hal Needham guy. He was a stuntman for a long time. Very famous stuntman in Hollywood. He decided to become a director. Because that's where the money was. So his first project was Smokey and Bandit. And he wrote the script for Smokey and Bandit on a bunch of yellow legal pads. And wrote everything out. Gave the script to Reynolds. They were friends. Al Needham was a stunt guy on some of other Burt Reynolds films. Burt Reynolds was a big superstar before Smokey and Bandit. He did roles like White Lightning and all kinds of Gator and The Longest Yard. Where he played that one of my favorite movies, where he played the guy in prison, the convict, who organized a football team. So Burt Reynolds, like I said, was at this time, 1977, put yourself there, whether you lived through it like I did, or whether you did it. But you put yourself in 1977, the biggest box office star was Burt Reynolds. Everybody loved it, especially the woman. Oh my God. He was in this centerfold of Penthouse magazine. And, laying out there, so to speak. And he was on Johnny Carson all the time. And he and Carson had a good chemistry, good relationship back and forth there. And he was just all over the place. Burt Reynolds. So anyway, the original script called for, Needham thought he was only going to make a B movie, just a fun movie starring Jerry Reed as the Bandit. And it was going to be not as big of a deal as it turned out to be. Well, when Needham showed the script to Burt Reynolds, first of all, Burt Reynolds said, "This is the worst script I have ever read in my entire life." But he agreed to do it. He agreed to do the movie because he was a friend of Needham's, and he thought it would be a lot of fun. So he agreed to do the movie, and everything changed. All of a sudden, Burt Reynolds was the Bandit, and Jerry Reed was his sidekick, the snowman. So the wheels started turning there. All of a sudden, Needham went to the studios and said, aha, I got Burt Reynolds involved with this movie. Aha, right, Togo? And I got the biggest box office star in the world. Now, all of a sudden, let's play ball, right? It was going to be more of a budget movie, a bigger movie than what was originally intended. The key thing you need to know about Smokey and Bandit is most of the film is improvised. If you're a fan of improvisation, go. Oh God, Katie's here too. You're all born. I'm not enjoying. If you're a fan of improv, like Robin Williams, I am, and whose line is it anyway? There's no script, you just improv. It's called. You would love Smokey and the Bandit because that entire movie practically is improv. They had the basic script, the basic framework of the script of what the story is, like I just told you. But the dialogue Most of it was improvised. So they would just say, all right, here's the next scene. Bert, you're in the Trans Am with Sally, and you're driving along and you're talking about this and this. And that's all he had. And just Burt Reynolds had to make up what he wanted to say. Jackie Gleason mostly was the biggest, he had the biggest leeway, so to speak, of improvising in a movie. Jackie Gleason, who played Buford T. Justice, the sheriff, just about improvised every single line that he had in that friggin' movie. I mean, well, you know what a big Jackie Gleason fan I am. If you've been following my show, I just love Jackie Gleason, and he just went wild in this movie. I mean, he had the Southern accent down. He knew people who were like Buford T. Justice, and he improvised the scene. Remember the scene, if you saw the movie, where they stop kind of in the middle of the movie, and Burt Reynolds stops into a diner. They called it a puke and choke on puke. That was the old CB line of it. And he stopped in the diner to pick up something to eat, and happened to be in the diner next to him at the counter was the sheriff. And they didn't know. Burt Reynolds saw it. It's like, uh-oh, look who's next to me, right? Jackie Gleason's character had no idea that this is the guy he was chasing the whole time, the bandit. And that whole scene was improvised. He ate the Diablo sandwich, Jackie Gleason did. And it gave him heartburn. You know that? We're going to talk about that. That became a legacy thing, too. But anyway, that's what you need to know about script, was that they're practically all the dialogue was improvised. The term sumbitch, SUMBITCH, was a term, instead of saying SOB, it was a term that people used in the South. And Burt Reynolds remembered his father using this term a lot. So, yeah, that some bitch, trash guy didn't pick up all the trash today. Yeah, something like that, you know. So they use this, especially Buford T. Justice. He uses that phrase quite often in the movie. What else? Yes, the roadside diner scene. We talked about that. Was Gleason's idea. That wasn't in the original script, by the way. Gleason said, would it be cool if all of a sudden in the middle of the film, the bandit met the guy who's chasing him, the sheriff, but they didn't know who was him. So that was all Gleason's idea. Eastbound and Down, yes, was written overnight by Jerry Reed. In fact, he wrote most of the music for the film. There was a tender ballad in the middle where the bandit gets it on, so to speak. That's an old term, get it on. That's a 70s term. With Sally Field, who he nicknamed Frog. You know, back in the day, CB radio, I gotta tell you this, CB radio was just bad in the 70s. Everybody needed to get a CB radio, either a base set that you had at home with the antenna on the roof, or a mobile set, which you had in the car. And this was really because the truckers were very big in the 70s. They communicated via CB. And they would warn each other if there was a SMOKEY cops up ahead with a speed trap. You better slow down, good buddy. The SMOKEY's looking for you, yeah, that sort of thing. And people picked up on that. And all of a sudden, CB radio became fad. And so it was a popular fad before the movie. What the movie did, Smokey and Bandit, was just increase fascination in CB radio. And they used a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the lingo that's used in CB radio. So you hear that throughout the movie too. What else? Oh yes, the role of Justice Buford T. Justice was originally they thought Richard Boone, of all people. Richard Boone. Do you remember Richard Boone? I kind of do. He was sort of this grizzly guy. He had the facial hair. I can't really remember anything he was in, but I kind of remember Richard Boone was actually the first person they thought of as playing the sheriff. I don't know what happened. Either Boone wasn't offered the role or declined it, but they settled on Jackie Gleason. I wouldn't even say settled. I mean, if you have Jackie Gleason in your movie, that's a win. You know, yeah. And let's face it, back in the 70s, Gleason was still in his prime. You know, I would say back in the Honeymooners' day, the 50s, yeah, that was Gleason's really. You know, he had his own show, you know, and from Miami, and he was like one of the top TV personalities in the world. In fact, Gleason, as you know, was a big movie guy. He did The Hustler, playing Fats and the pool player. And Gleason was in a few other movies, and so he was well respected as a serious actor. But in the 70s, you know, Gleason had a sort of revival of his career, Smokey the Bandit. And of course, we're not going to talk about the sequels. They had a Smokey the Bandit 2 and a 3, which were pretty bad, to be honest with you. But Jackie Gleason was involved in all 3. So the franchise, Smokey and the Bandit, sort of revived Gleason's career up into the 80s. And he passed away in 85, I believe 86, after he made Nothing in Common with Tom Hanks. So, you know, the fact that they casted Jackie Gleason in the role was a big, big turning point. And not only in that movie, but in Gleason's career. Sally Field wasn't offered the role initially because the studio thought she wasn't attractive enough. Can you believe that? I think Sally Field is pretty. She's cute. I wouldn't call her sexy. Maybe that's what they were looking for. I don't know. But Sally Field is this wholesome. She's still alive, but this wholesome, cute girl next door. You know, America's sweetheart. You know, Sally Field did all those Gidget movies in the early 60s, beach movies. She was the flying nun in the late 60s. And she made movies even after. I mean, she was Forrest Gump's mom in Forrest Gump. And so Sally Field, she won an Oscar. She's always been with us, you know, in one way or the other, since like the early 60s. And over 50 years, we've had Sally Field in our life. So, but I think that's awful, don't you? To say, oh, we don't think she's attractive, you know. As it turned out, Burt Reynolds himself said, if we don't hire Sally Field to take the role as Frog, forget me, I'm out of this movie. Well, of course, they're going to want to bow down to Reynolds, since Reynolds was this big box office guy. So they accepted, they cast Sally Field in the role. She actually, they offered her the role, and actually, she wasn't sure she wanted to take the role. Why not? Because she read the script as well and found out that most of the dialogue wasn't there. It's like, where's the dialogue? What the hell, right? She wasn't sure about the improvising thing, you know. What if I can't think of anything to say? But she eventually accepted it. And during the movie, that's when Burt Reynolds and Sally Field started dating each other. And you know, you know what happens. So actually in Burt Reynolds, I read Burt Reynolds' autobiography, and he said probably the biggest mistake he made in his life was not settling down with Sally Field. He said Sally Field was his true love. She really loved him. But Reynolds, being the big star he was, sort of went glamorous with Bonnie Anderson, who turned out to be a gold digger. Dinah Shore was a nice lady, but she was older, and Reynolds at the time didn't want to settle there. You know. But he said out of all the women he dated over the years, it all went back to Sally Field. And he said in his memoir that I should have married him. There you go. Should have married him. Okay, most of the movie was filmed in Georgia. A lot of these back roads and highways in Georgia were closed down. They filmed the movie, a lot of the car chases, speed things in the movie, the Trans Am running away from the cops. That was all filmed in Georgia. Most of it was filmed in Georgia. A little bit was filmed in Hollywood, but most of it was filmed on location down in Georgia. Little Enos and Big Enos, you know, the tall guy, 6'7", the little guy, 4 foot, played by the great Pat McCormick, who was a comedy writer. He played Big Enos, and the little guy was Paul Williams. He was a big time songwriter back in the day. He wrote Evergreen for the movie with Barbra Streisand. He wrote a lot of hits back in the 70s. The Carpenters, We've Only Just Begun. He wrote that. So he was a big time songwriter. But he also dabbled in acting as well. And so he played Little Enos in the movie. And he was pretty good. I thought he was pretty good. What else do we have? Oh yeah, there's one scene. They tell you how much they beat up these Trans Ams. There's one scene, and you remember if you watched Swiggy and Bandit, they had the car jump from one thing over a river or over a creek to another, like over the water. And Burt Reynolds, the story, he wanted to get away from the cops. They had him penned in. He said, we got him now. And he revved it up, got a good start, jumped that baby, jumped it to the other side. And it really happened. It really happened. They jumped it already. But Reynolds wasn't in the car. Of course, Hal Needham, the director, was actually in the car during the jump. And they had a lady, stunt lady, who sat in for Sally Field. Well, that jump was accomplished not only by the high motor that they had this Trans Am all jacked up with. They added a booster, a rocket booster. I swear to God, they added a rocket booster to that car. And it was the same kind of rocket booster. Do you remember Evil Knievel? That's another name from the 70s, you know? That Evil Knievel, and he jumped over all these cars. He was a daredevil. And the one time he jumped over the Snake River, and the Snake River Canyon, trying to get to the other side of the canyon. Well, he didn't make it. But that booster that he had on his motorcycle, same kind of booster that they put on the Trans Am, that helped the Trans Am jump the goalie in Smokey and the Bandit. So we got 1977 Trans Am. Burt Reynolds stated in his memoir that he made a lot of movies in his time. That making Smokey and the Bandit was the most fun he had ever had making a movie. And one of his favorites, one of the favorite movies he ever made, and it was the most fun. Well, of course, he fell in love with Sally Field too. Don't forget about that. And working with Jackie Gleason, one of his favorites. You can't have more than that. A couple other things, final things. Smokey and the Bandit got a 72 rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Mostly reviewers liked it. And it got pretty good reviews back in the late 70s when it came out. But a lot of people said it's empty-headed. There's nothing brainy about it. You just sit back and what they call a popcorn movie. It came out in the summertime. It was a good date movie. And you take your date and you sit back with some popcorn and you enjoy the movie. You enjoy the car crashes and the car chases. And it was just a lot of fun. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And that's basically, it is what it is, basically, as they say. You know who was a big fan of the movie? Alfred Hitchcock. The one and only Alfred Hitchcock. He loves Smokey and the Bandit. He made it a point to send Burt Reynolds a personal note. In fact, the note itself is copied in Reynolds' memoir. Reynolds still had it in 2015. Copied it, put it in his book. Just a short blurb saying, I just want you to know, Mr. Reynolds, that I enjoyed your movie so much. Thanks for making it, blah, blah, blah. Sincerely, Alfred Hitchcock. And we know Hitchcock. Oh, geez, we can talk about Hitchcock. We can have a whole program about Hitchcock, huh? The Diablo sandwich. That's the sandwich that Jackie Gleason, Buford T. Justice got at the Chicken Coop. When they stopped for it, but the Diablo became a legacy after the movie. And as far as I can tell, it's a hot sandwich. That's why it's called Diablo. Hot sauce made of ground beef, spicy ground beef, corn, and sour cream. And if you remember in the movie, it was dripping down Gleason's chin. He was wiping off with that kid, belching. He had to use the bathroom after that. That's the kind of sandwich it is. So I don't know if it's still around or not down south, but it was a real sandwich. And after Smokey the Bandit, it became even more of a staple. And final thing, because of the movie, because so many people love Smokey the Bandit, there came such things known as the Bandit Run. Once a year, people get together, which if they own a Trans Am, and they get together and they make a run just like Bandit did. They start at Texarkana, Texas. Sounds like a lot of fun to me. Doesn't that sound like fun to you? You get together with these guys, you start at Texarkana, and you make the run just as Jackie Gleason did, and Burt Reynolds and Jerry Reed. You follow that trail, you trace the path that the Bandit did, and all the way through the southern states, through Mississippi, Louisiana, and you end up in Georgia, Jonesboro, Georgia. And that's where Reynolds ended up. And so once a year, these guys get together with their Trans Ams, with their big rigs, and they reenact what they call the Bandit movie. And they had 2017 was a 40-year anniversary of the movie. They had a huge, gigantic turnout. Now, I bet you in 2027, which is only 2 years from now, 50-year anniversary of Smokey and the Bandit. Can you believe that? What kind of turnout they're going to have for the Bandit Run? I kind of like the be involved in that, wouldn't you? Well, it's kind of cool. Yeah, there was talk of the TV series, even as late as 2020, Smokey and the Bandit. This movie, by the way, spawned so much. Not only did it spawn um, sequels, but it was ready to lead with the Dukes of Hazzard. You know the Dukes of Hazzard, and all of a sudden, you had a lot of these good old boy TV series, movies. I mean, that's how Hollywood is. You have a hit. You could expect a lot of sequels, a lot of copycatting. And I mean, they did it back in the 70s too. It did change. So, so as late as 2020, 25 years ago, they were talking about having a TV series based on Smokey and Bandit. It never came to fruition. And through my research, I can't find out why it was never accepted. But there were thoughts out there of doing it. And back in 2016, there was a documentary called The Bandit. You probably find it there somewhere. And it was all about the making of Smokey and Bandit. And actually, they did the documentary for the 40th anniversary of the film. Now, maybe with the 50th anniversary coming up, maybe we'll see some more of that, like documentaries and talking about Smokey and Bandit a little bit more. And final thing, Burt Reynolds there passed away in 2018. And, I never got to meet Burt Reynolds. I just know every guy back in the late 70s wanted to be Burt Reynolds. He had that trademark mustache. When he shaved, he just didn't look like the same. Burt Reynolds was a star. He did Dan August. He played that cop Dan August in the early 70s on ABC. And he was clean shaven then. And a good looking guy, but he grew the mustache, and that was like his trade. And that sort of propelled him into this sex symbol kind of stratosphere. And like I said, he was in Penthouse magazine. The woman loved him, and he just Burt Reynolds was on the top of his game back then. And then after that, he sort of went laid low for a long time. And it was sort of a little revival for Burt Reynolds. He came back with Boogie Nights, was nominated for an Academy Award. And all of a sudden, you started seeing him back on the screen again. In fact, Reynolds was cast in the movie. Remember the movie a couple years ago, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio? And it was about the Manson murders back in the late 60s. In fact, I believe, from what I'm hearing through the grapevine, they may do a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We'll see. But that was a really popular movie. We went to see it, and I loved it. I thought it was great. It was long, but I loved it. And what a surprise at the end. What a twist. But anyway, Burt Reynolds was actually supposed to be in the movie. He was supposed to play the guy. I don't know if you remember. Bruce Dern played an old guy who was in bed. And Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio were looking through this camp outside of LA. And that's where the Manson family were hanging out. And an old guy who was part of this whole plan, this whole thing, was living there. He kind of owned that camp. And he was letting the Manson family live there. And that was played by Bruce Dern. And it originally was supposed to be played by Burt Reynolds. Well, wouldn't you know it? Reynolds died just weeks before he was supposed to film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. How about that? So even up to his death, Burt Reynolds was sought after. And you know what? Do yourself a favor, if you're a Burt Reynolds fan, if you remember him from the past, or if you're a newbie to the earth, and you want to know more about this guy who was once the king of the movies, get his memoir. But what I read was Enough About Me. And it sort of talks about, Reynolds had his own memoir, and then he wrote this other one about all the people in his life that he worked with, and like Johnny Carson. And he had a chapter on each person. And it was really, really interesting. His viewpoints and his opinions on all these people that he worked with over the years. And not only was it that, it was sort of a memoir too, because he talked about the Smokey and the Bandit days and other aspects of his career. If you have a chance, look that up. Trust me, you'll have a lot of fun reading his biographies. Okay, so that's Smokey and the Bandit. My final words on the movie. I liked it. I haven't watched Smokey and the Bandit in a long time, but if I came across it, either streamed it or came across it on a channel like TBS. Now, TBS, being an Atlanta-based station, they used to run Smokey and the Bandit a lot, because it's, like I said, it's more of a Southern kind of a movie. And so they played it a lot back in the day. I don't know if they run it so much now, but that's probably where you would catch it, or on like Turner Classic Movies. But it's a slice of the 70s. That's a good way I would put Smokey and the Bandit. It's a slice of the 70s. It's a lot of fun. It's just good times. It's nothing you have to think about or worry about. It not only gives you a taste of the 70s, what it was like during the CB craze, the fashions, the girls were wearing hot pants. In fact, there was one character in the movie called Hot Pants. The guys, with the fashions they were wearing, and it's just not only is it a time capsule of that era of the 70s, which were a lot of fun, but it's just mine was kind of a popcorn movie. You stream it, you put it on, you just have fun with it. So there you go. Thanks for tuning in. And it was good to be back again and do another movie classic. And I think I'm going to come back more often to I'm thinking about doing a segment, maybe once a week, like I do the movie classes, called Remember When. And because I know a lot of people out there who watch me have been around the block a long time like me. You've lived through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and there's a lot to talk about that time. And people who watch me who haven't been around that long maybe could learn something from that era, because nowadays, we look at it like we look at the 80s now, like we used to look at the 50s. Remember back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a fascination with the 50s. They were playing 50s music, and you had Happy Days, and you had movies like American Graffiti. And there was just this romance fascination with the 50s. I mean, even one of my favorite movies, Back to the Future, which was filmed in 1985, went back to 1950. Again, this fascination with the 50s. Well, that's how we feel now about the 80s. Like it was this glorious time to live. And it was a fun time. And maybe we'll talk more about that in future episodes. Okay. And bring back some memories for you guys, my friends who lived through that time. And for those of you who didn't live through that time, maybe talk about some things that you've heard about, or maybe you weren't aware of, that can pique your interest into kind of investigating more about the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we'll do it. All right, everybody. Peace and love. So it's 11 o'clock. Got to get ready to watch the Phillies. They have a doubleheader today. They were rained out yesterday like I thought they would be. We got a lot of rain here yesterday. So day-night doubleheader. 1 o'clock game. Christopher Sanchez pitches 6:45 game tonight. Great matchup. Zach Wheeler was the runner-up to the Cy Young last year against the winner of the Cy Young, Chris Sale for Atlanta. Great matchup tonight. Of course, the days of the regular doubleheader are long gone. And that's something else we'll talk about down the road. You remember the twilight doubleheaders that started at 5:35? One admission price, you get to see 2 games. Remember those days? Not anymore. Nowadays, it's a day-night doubleheader. And so you don't get one game for free. If you want to watch both games, you got to pay for both games. Those were the days, right? When doubleheaders were scheduled for the 4th of July and Memorial Day. And you got one game for free. Time moves on. All right, everybody. Peace and love, my friends. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed this episode where we talked about the great movie Smokey and the Bandit. Take care until next time. See you then.